Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David Ige.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, aloha and good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in here to Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji, joined by Yanji Denise. And Yanji, we're going to kick off this week catching up with the mayor. There is never a lack of topics to talk about and always some very insightful conversations.
He is one of our favorite guests. He is joining us live this morning from Honolulu, Hawaii. Please do welcome Mayor Rick Blangiardi. Thank you for being here.
Oh, good morning. Aloha. I didn't know I was one of your favorite guests. I am so touched. I am so touched. Yeah.
Well, we always love having you on because we get right into so many issues. We never have enough time. So let's get right in there. And let's start with these illegal vacation rentals. I'm very interested to hear from you about the crackdown that you have been leading up until now. How is enforcement going? And, just tell us about how that all is shaking out.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's really an important piece of legislation for us, and there's a lot hanging in the balance because the intent here is to recapture our neighborhoods. And so that said, I think we're off to a good beginning. I want to see more happen, and it will because we're building up momentum. But right now, to date, we've probably issued about 100 notice of violations. The really tough areas are really from downtown to Hawaii Kai on this side, and then it's Kailua and the whole North Shore out there. But we have a lot of confidence in our ability to not only, because our team, the short-term vacation rental team that's issuing these, has lots of leads. It's a little bit problematic as we learned on some of the paperwork, but we're beginning to get a lot of momentum. And one thing that I did learn last week in my conversation with the hotel industry. And we're not doing this for the benefit of the hotels, although they will be a beneficiary. We're doing this primarily because we want to be able to manage our neighborhoods. But that said, they reported that short-term vacation rentals are down 37% on Oahu because they track that and they were very aware of it because we had a lot of feedback from them. So even though it might seem a little bit right now that 100 or so notice of violations that have been issued, there's going to be a tipping point, and because this is $10,000 a day, and we fully expect to be able to enforce. In fact, we have retained, and we're in the process of finalizing our own collection agency on this, which is something the city hadn't had before. And so we're playing hardball, and I expect that we're going to have some very strong results here in the weeks and months ahead.
If you can talk about that enforcement procedures and protocol, have there been instances where it was a bad tip? I mean, if you can go through that process, how is the city really determining that there is a violation that is being met here? And is there any resistance on those that you are citing?
Well, we have a 7-person investigative team that goes out. That's the idea, is not just looking at, because our software actually goes through and looks at all the people advertising on websites. It actually clears 60 websites a day. And we've worked also closely with Airbnb and Expedia and in our efforts with them not to have them advertising illegal vacation rentals as well. And thus far, we're getting good cooperation. So the investigators are the ones who would do the follow-up to go out, if in fact, with a good lead. And so it's more like that. So far, there's been no pushback. And I think that part of the reason why I'm hearing already from the hotel industry that on Oahu, that they're down 37%, which is because they know we're going to enforce. We've been really serious about this, and so I think we're just building some momentum. I think the next time we do this show, I'll be able to give you some numbers that will sound very significant in this regard.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that collection agency and how that mechanism is going to work, because obviously there are systems in place for the city to collect other fines. Why does this need its own collections agency, its own enforcement, if you will?
Well, to be very candid with you, and I got to watch myself because this is definitely the most quotable half hour I spent with anybody is what gets said here,
Well, good.
But it was recently, and Don did an interview Don Takeuchi Apuna from DPP, and talked about the fines that were in arrears, if you will, owed to the city historically. And to be honest with you, coming into office, I kind of made the assumption that when it came to fines by the city, that people just pay them as they do with any fines that they get in not paying property taxes. The city is very exacting that way and very efficient. Turns out that historically, we've not been really good at collecting fines. And so we looked at this and we said, it's one thing, we'll see what we can do in arrears. And we haven't quite yet come to an agreement with the company. We have dealt with a couple of companies. We're selecting the company now that's going to do it. It's what's called municipal debt collections. Municipal debt collections. I've learned a lot about this recently. And so part of this extension, even though we have somebody to collect taxes collect fines within DPP, in order to ensure the effectiveness of this, it's my decision that we want to hire an external collection agency to help put the pressure to bear. So the combination of that, and once we've issued notices of violations, and then an ordinance that says to some of the NOO that that they're in arrears, that it's in that execution, and we have to have that kind of follow-up. I'm going to say it again, I was surprised at the amount of outstanding fines that have not been paid to the city that's, in a collection process. We're going to clean that up as well.
You mentioned DPP, and there continues to be a lot of discussion about the department. Of course, changing in leadership that's happened there as well since you've taken office, and the backlog that continues to exist. If you can give us an update about where things stand within the department, how progress has been made, and any updates with the backlog that
we are making progress. And I have a lot of confidence in Dawn Takeuchi Apuna and her stepping in. She's been our deputy for the last couple of years. In that process, I got to know Dawn. She's a very well-educated woman. She has her undergraduate and master's degree from UCLA in urban planning, and she holds a law degree from Hastings. So she's a very smart woman, and she's got a great management style about her. We just had a report in here last Thursday. The bot, which was part of the software we bought now, has cleaned up or gone through. There are 11 categories of what this machine could do on the 3,500 or so applications we had in the pre-screening. It's identified those that passed and those that have some areas of problem. We're now going to be in a position where we're going to notify those people of the actual problems. So much of the frustration that's happened is that people would never hear back from DPP. Then all of a sudden they would hear something, and then it was a long time to response. What we're looking to do is just streamline everything in this process. And there's a whole lot of other things we're doing. So I think we're making some really good progress. I was pleased to hear that they've already gone through the first, that in essence represents typically about 110-day waiting period just in the pre-screening part of it. That plus we're working with we're about to name a task force. We're working with various stakeholders because some of the dysfunction that we've had with third-party reviews, as far as everybody's wanted to blame DPP. I don't say this defensively, but that presupposes that all the information that was coming in, including data, if you will, from third-party reviews, were good. And we had a lot of data, a lot of information that was not submitted correctly. So there's just a lot of issues. We're working closely with the solar industry. I feel very confident about that. That represents of the permits that we get asked, 20,000 a year. More than 50% of those are with solar. We've made some really good inroads there. I think if you had anybody on from the solar industry, they'll tell you that. Look, it's taken us a while to get in this place, but we only started to have the monies to invest in the technology and the people in July at the start of this fiscal budget. And I think we've made some really strong progress. I think the next time, I'll say it again in 3 months' time, I'll be able to give you a lot of really good data points, but I feel like we're moving towards unprecedented streamlining of activities. We understand the pressure and the need to do this, and we're giving it our best shot. But I will tell you that I have a lot of confidence in the road ahead. I do.
Let's talk a little bit about guns. I know we hop all over the place in the show, but the city handles so many issues. So let's take this one on. We know that the chief of police, of course, is going through the process of reviewing gun concealed carry permits right now, and it looks like many of those will be approved. You've asked the city council to put in some restrictions as to where guns can actually be carried in our community. Right. What's the status of that, and what is your hope that the city council does with your suggestion?
Well, I've taken on a very strong position. I've made that known not only with Chief Logan in HPD, but also with the prosecutor's office and also with the city council. And that look at this past weekend and what happened in the LGBT community, TQ community with in Colorado Springs. And I just don't think anybody in any good conscience wants to make access to guns any more accessible than what we need to do per the Supreme Court ruling. So City Council, we've submitted, I understand they put sensitive places on their docket, and we're looking forward to hopefully having them approved. I am going to go in to speak with them about it. We've pretty much named the places that we don't believe people should be carrying weapons, even if they have a license to carry. And it has to do with schools and government buildings and a number of other facilities, libraries, et cetera, things that just make some sense. So that's where we're at on that. I think that, Chief Logan will be approving, as you just suggested, Yunji, the license people will apply. I think we have some over 500 applications on Oahu. We're going to honor the integrity of the law, but we just don't want to make it, this is a place that for 170 years, we've not been a gun culture. Other places, people have different attitudes about guns, and that's so much of, what this is about here in Hawaii. And so we're going to be restrictive. I don't know how else to say.
You mentioned the city council, and you will be working with new council members that will be getting sworn into office here in just a few weeks.
Yes.
What have you had the opportunity to speak to some of these newer members and talk about the relationship that you've had with this past council and some of the potential moving forward with the new makeup of what this landscape will look like on the council?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm kind of sad to see, we're coming up on our second year, and I've been working with these people for the full 2 years. This summer going to be leaving because one of the things that we determined early on was to create a collaboration between the city council and our administration. And I had a lot of confidence in our administration and their ability to go before council, no matter what the issues were, to be the professionals that they are. And I think it's manifested itself. If you look at the bills we've been able to pass and get through, I think the worst vote we've had on anything was 6-3. And we've gone through 2 different budget approvals at 9-0. We did the short-term vacation rental at 8-1. Everybody told me you could never get that passed. So for me, we've had a very good working relationship with City Council. In fact, part of it was even enhanced with Tommy Waters, the chair, because we invited him to participate in all of our heart meetings as well. And so we've really extended ourselves from a communication standpoint and the things that we were presenting to them to be, professionally responsible, for want of a better way, understanding that they're a vital part of our work as an administration. So I'm kind of sad to see that in one hand, that people are moving on. I was just at a meeting the other night with Senator Fukunaga now, and with Carol moving on, and we've had a really good working relationship. But I don't know. I don't know Matt and Tyler, and certainly I've called all of them, Val Okimoto as well, but we've had good conversation initially, and from everything I could hear from them coming in, I think they've been very appreciative of the fact that we've established a good working relationship with council, and I want to perpetuate that. I think it's an absolutely essential that we do that. I'm going to say something else as well, since you didn't ask me the question, but I'm about to meet again tomorrow morning with Governor-elect Green and talking about on the going forward. In fact, we're going to hold a press conference on a major announcement tomorrow. But I said at election night from the podium when I went to his headquarters to the audience and to the state for that matter, that I think that here in Oahu, at least as far as what I can be held accountable for, that everybody can expect an unprecedented amount of collaboration, unprecedented, between our administration, the city, and the state working together. And I think when that happens, I think you're going to begin to hear some things very quickly. It's going to open up a lot of different resources. It's going to allow us to get things done, not the least of which is signing of an emergency proclamation, which will really help us in the affordable housing issue. But just, I believe in that. Look, 2 years into this, I didn't come into this job as a long-term politician. Collaboration is really essential, especially with these groups. And so that's one of the things we pride ourselves on, to have great collaboration first and foremost within our own cabinet. One of the things that we told everybody very clearly up front was, we weren't going to operate in silos. We were going to knock down those walls. It was really important for city government, if it was going to be effective, for having our own cabinet work together. And then the extension of that went to city council and our ability to work with them, and certainly across the street to the state, as well as anybody and everybody else. So I want to be very user-friendly that way. I just think that that's how great things happen. And I mean, quite honestly, now that we're pulling out of COVID, look at the time that we came into office. I mean, we got sworn in during the middle of a pandemic when things were very dark. We've been closed down since March. We get sworn in on January 2nd, 2021. There wasn't even any talk of vaccines becoming readily available. Times were really uncertain. So we started out in a really challenged way, to say the least. And so the very least we could do was be able to work and collaborate with each other and try to build as much goodwill to be constructive because of the external needs. So I'm feeling really good about stuff. Right
I gotta ask, what is the can you give us a preview of the newser tomorrow? You can't drop something like that.
No. We're going to announce.
He's not even sworn in yet, so let's get the preview.
Well, I think. Look, I don't want to take any thunder away from the governor. He invited me this morning, Governor-elect Green, this morning, to participate because it actually speaks to. But it's on the subject of what we're going to do in homelessness. That's actually how I got to know Governor-elect Green. Going back to my days at Hawaii News Now and the work that we were doing on the homeless, and then we were involved and really got to know each other during the H4 project and all of that, and bringing that to fruition, which has not been the success we wanted it to be, but it will be because we are turning the corner now on that finally. But it's going to be in that area. It's going to be, and I don't want to take any thunder away from them, but we're meeting tomorrow actually to talk about the things after that press conference that we want to be able to do. I'm bringing over some of my key staff people. I just want to say it again, collaboration and be able to work together in the spirit of the old team axiom that great things happen when nobody cares who gets the credit. We're not interested in taking credit for anything. We just want to make good things happen. And I think if you talk to anybody in my cabinet, if you haven't already, they will tell you that that's our mindset. And we're just trying to make things, because this community needs it. It deserves it. And that's what they expect from us.
On the subject of homelessness, we do have a question here from Sandy who says, question for the mayor, are there any public bathrooms in your Chinatown revitalization plan? We know that you've made Chinatown a priority. So what do you say to Sandy this morning? Are bathrooms part of the plan?
We want to be able to incorporate bathrooms in there. The problem we've had is that, and I've seen it firsthand, is that once you put public bathrooms in, it's been amazing the amount of destruction that goes on. If people come in, they break toilets, they break sinks, and you sit there, you go, it gets vandalized. And then on top of that, there were a lot of other things that were happening in bathrooms with respect to drug dealing and prostitution. I mean, think about that, okay? You want to have a public restroom because you understand what it represents. Yet what was going on before had things as insidious as prostitution and drug dealing, and on top of that, vandalism. And so you say, better not to have it. That doesn't really work. So I think now that we're getting to a level of control, if you will, with the amount of arrests we've made, dealing with the drug dealers, and we've already agreed that we're going to sign into law. We're going to extend the police coverage down there, the increased police coverage at one point, and then we're actually going to be implementing in the first quarter when they arrive. We've had supply delays, 52 cameras in Chinatown. Really state-of-the-art cameras to added security, which really, quite honestly, I think there's only one working down there right now. There only used to be 26, most of which haven't worked in years. Once we start to do that kind of stuff, I absolutely would like to put in public restrooms because I understand what they mean. We're not going to obviously install cameras inside the restrooms, but but we want to be able to monitor that. And so I think that we're coming to that point in time. We understand the convenience that represents. We should have that. But that's what we've been up against, things like that. And just, you got to work through that stuff in order to be able to do the other. And I know that's probably a candid answer, but that's where I'm coming from on that.
Switching gears to a topic I'm sure you love talking about, and that's the rail. How concerned are you about some of the cracks in the concrete, and what have you been? What updates have you gotten from HART with regards to maintaining and fixing some of those cracks that have been found, and the long-term plan about moving forward? And if this is something that will happen in Q1, where we actually will see people riding the rail?
Well, you know, we meet weekly with Hart, and obviously I'm very concerned about anything that would be structural that could pose any kind of safety problem. That goes without saying, as well as Hart. I mean, Lori Kayakina, and you've dealt with her enough to know she's a very responsible executive. So as of last week's meeting, we still didn't have the final update on the treatment. I mean, I think they know what they're going to do, and this gets into really technical stuff from an engineering standpoint. So I think that they've identified, one or two of the techniques I think are going to be used. I didn't get the final ruling on that, but let me just say this to you as far as my expectation. Even though it was reported that it could be as late as July, I'm still very hopeful, and quite honestly feel a little bit confident that this will be remedied, and we actually will be they'll be handing over for operating and maintenance the rail to the city by the end of this first quarter. Nobody has moved me off that position, even though it was reported July 1. I'm still very hopeful. I remain optimistic. And I think we'll address any and all safety concerns because of all absolute importance. I think, and that's just about ready to get announced now.
Okay, and one of the things that has been, a theme throughout our conversations whenever we come on is talking about the hiring challenges. You say that you have made this sort of a long-term goal of your administration to sort of revitalize, if you will, the recruitment process at the city and also to cut down some of that time. So how is that going? We know that HPD, of course, has had quite a few vacancies. DPP, I believe it was over 80 vacancies. So how are you chipping away at those vacancies across the board?
Let me address the DPP situation for one. I mean, both of those 344 police officers, we chose to hire 80 people in DPP, 40 of which would be replacements and 40 of which would be new, incremental, and then we're going to hire another 80 over the course of the next 2 years. But I'm happy to report a couple of things on this. First of all, and I knew you were going to ask this question. So from July to October, we got just under 5,000 applications to work for the city. Now, that is about a 22% increase, or about 1,000 more than we would typically get. So that outreach is already beginning to pay dividends as we've just begun. And we've also got a report, because if you remember, we said 180 days to hire people. You know, we went through all the diagnostics, so we looked at the systemic choking points on what we were doing to make it almost impossible to get a job at the city. We said in 3 months we could cut it to 90 days. We're not quite there. We are on a couple of things. We're under that. I think we're going to need, and we only got to look at the data about 10 days ago. It took a while to be able to do this. I think by the time this year ends, which I realize is only 6 weeks away now or so, that when we look at the second data set, we'll have come very close to achieving that 90-day goal, which is still not acceptable. If we're in private sector and somebody's going to come to work and say it's going to take us 90 days to hire somebody, I mean, that's crazy, right? But you had to start somewhere when you're talking about 180 days. That's why I'm encouraged. So the one thing I can tell you that was said, first of all, we've eliminated a lot of the back and forth that used to go on. We've got things now happening sequentially, okay, which was really important to streamline that. And what drove that, and it was said by Andy Quano, actually, our head of budget and fiscal services, he said they had to learn to let go. They had to learn to let go on some of the processes that had just been layered in over time that really were not necessary. As I said, it was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of unnecessary redundancy and things that would just cause things not to happen. So we've eliminated that. We're moving sequentially. We're seeing an uptick in the applications, but we have some really profound needs, as everybody does. I mean, I just was given a statistic this morning that says that compared to the beginning of the pandemic, Hawaii's workforce has decreased by 10,000 people. And I felt it in a few places I've gone. We've all seen it. You know, we're still missing. So we're trying to recruit in what is a very difficult period. So when I see a 22% increase in applications, and we've only just begun reaching out, I'm encouraged by that. Okay?
Well, it is the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, which means another really event that people look forward to is the opening of Honolulu Hale for the city lights. Things have been a lot different over the past few years with COVID putting restrictions on what can happen at the Hale during this time, where many families look forward to coming down. What can you tell us about what's happening down there as we move into this holiday season?
Well, you know, I alluded earlier to a year from now, but let's just think back a year ago. And I remember at this time, you know, kind of coming up in the end of our very first year, and the debate that went on about us even having, the lights at Christmas time at Honolulu Holiday. We decided we were going to open up City Hall, and remember, there were a lot of restrictions still yet in place about the numbers of people that come in. We were able to do it. It was great. We had to not have a parade, but all in, having come to this place every single day and seeing the thousands of people that came, not just in the opening of it, but throughout the whole entire Christmas, was very gratifying. And this year we're going all out. We're right back to where we used to be with the parade and everything. We're going to do that on December 3rd. On December 2nd, the day before, I'll be topping the Christmas tree. You're welcome to come up in the bucket with me, Ryan. I promise not to push you out when we do that. But then the very next week, we're going to do it out in Kapolei on December 10th. And so we're right back, and we're excited about it. We want this to be, look, we've all been through, the world has been through, we have been through here in Hawaii. We have been through the most incredible couple of years of our lives. I mean, most of us could not have imagined, the circumstances we've all had to face. It's been unprecedented. We are in a good place now. I'm not saying that, COVID's not still out there. We've learned to live with that better than ever. And we'll continue to do so. But this is a holiday season, starting with this great, incredible Thanksgiving holiday, to be truly grateful for all of our blessings. And we want people to feel that way. I've told you before, a couple of things that were never part of our campaign rhetoric, along with a few other things. But, we understand we have to rebuild trust in city government. We know we have to do that. We do that through action and deed. But in the greater picture, we're looking for every opportunity we can to also build hope in this community. That's why I bring up the collaboration not only with the city council and the new state administration, but quite honestly, in every opportunity we have to do that. It's one of the things I loved about this past year was having that Little League parade. I thought that was such a joyous experience when we were able to do that and the way people responded. So, Honolulu Holiday is going to be another extension of that. This is a joyous event, and we want to make it that way.
On election night, we did see you speak, and there was a reference to perhaps, a second campaign, obviously, on your behalf. Tell us about your thoughts and your planning. We understand that you are running. I don't know when you're going to make that official, but if you could share that with us, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I decided not to be coy about that. I think you two might have been the first ones to ask me. I forget. I just said, no, look, if my health holds up, and I feel pretty good right now, you can't get this done in 4 years. And not only that, the challenge we had in our entire first year, we came into office with 50 people roughly that were brand new between our new cabinet directors, and not to mention some of the 3 that we saved, and the amount of deputies. We brought in 18 deputies, and then you add to that my communications team, and chief of staff, and even Mike Formby as my manager that weren't even part of it. About 50 of us. And for so many months of that first year, I couldn't even put 5 people in the room at the same time. And trying to lead and build cultural changes and develop expectations and stuff under those circumstances. So I'm not making any excuses. I feel good about where we are nearly 2 years into it. But boy, I tell you, somebody said to me recently, and you'll hear me say this again, because I thought this was so apropos. In this business, the days are long and the years are short. Right? And you can't get it done in 4 years, the stuff we have on the horizon, what we want to get done. And not only that, what I'm very confident we can get done. That's the one thing that has me so excited, because I have great confidence in the team that we have in place. We've made a few adjustments, but very few. And when I consider the quality of the men and women who make up this administration and their commitment, I'm inspired by their passion, their capability, and the fact that I'm surrounded by people who don't whine, who don't make excuses, who constantly work through, cutting through the things, as we just talked about today, just even the hiring situation. This has been going on for decades. It's not just a little while. I mean, the stuff that we're trying to get done is we're just breaking through. And if we're successful, it'll make a big difference. And I think we're already beginning to see some success.
Okay, well, our time is up. It always goes by fast when we talk to you, Mr. Mayor. We thank you for spending your morning with us and starting off your week and giving us an update on all those things that you are dealing with, and wish you and your staff a happy Thanksgiving as we head into this holiday season.
Thank you, and Yanji. Thank you for doing this. I think it's a great service. Like I said, it's probably the most quotable half hour I get to do. But look, I just, in closing, want to wish everybody a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving, and just hopefully have them feel that that all of us here understand what needs to be done, and we're about that business of getting it done.
Thank
right.
you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your staff. We really appreciate it. Mahalo. Always great to hear from the mayor. No shortage of news in his talks. Very interesting. If you want to go back and watch from the beginning, we covered a breadth of topics. We started with illegal vacation rentals and the mayor sharing that not only are they out enforcing, they have 7 people enforcing and issuing notices of violation on the illegal vacation rentals. Remember, that's a $10,000 a day fine. But the mayor is in the process of contracting a collections agency, a separate what's called municipal collections agency, which is essentially a credit agency for municipalities that then goes out, or credit collector for municipalities, which then go out and actually hunts down that money. He said that the mechanisms in place are not sufficient to do the kind of collections that they are anticipating having to do. And he said that they're already seeing results with about a third of vacation rental bookings stopped, as far as he can tell, with the data that they have. So that's a very interesting progression and a public-private partnership, one that we did not expect.
Yeah, and we also got an update from him on the rail saying that the city as well as HART are still waiting for that initial report to tackle some of the cracks that are found in some of those concrete structures. But the mayor did sound pretty confident that the keys will be handed over to the city in the end of Q1 next year, signaling a way for and a path forward for riders to actually begin riding the rail from Kapolei into town, into Central Oahu, into Aloha Stadium in that area. And so we will continue to wait to see what happens with this report and if that has any significant pushback on the projected timeline that the mayor is anticipating. We also spoke to him about the recent election. He seems optimistic about those who he will soon be working with.
That's right. He did say that he is having a joint news conference with Governor-elect Green tomorrow to announce some new initiatives. He didn't want to share too much, but he did reveal that it does have to do with homelessness and tackling that issue, something that he says that he is very passionate about and something that he and Dr. Green first met on a couple of years ago when he came into this office. So interesting to hear about that synergy that he's hoping to have with the folks across the street at the Capitol, and also talking about his relationship with the new council members. He's sorry to see the folks that are leaving to go over to the state legislature, but he did say that he has spoken with all of the incoming members. He is anticipating a good working relationship with those folks coming in. One of the things that they're going to be working on is gun legislation. He is really hoping to set some parameters in place as the police chief looks to approve what could be more than 500 conceal and carry permits. That's just at last count. Who knows how many more have been filed. And the mayor saying that we are not a gun culture here in Hawaii. And so they want to put some parameters in place for places like libraries, public spaces, government buildings, and whatnot, to make sure that guns are not carried into those spaces. Do expect to see a lot of pushback from the Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment folks in this community who feel like those restrictions are unwarranted.
Always just so much to discuss with the mayor. So if you've missed any portion of our conversation with him, we encourage you to go back and watch us on the platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. You can also watch a rebroadcast on television on Channel 50, or listen to this as a podcast. On Wednesday, we will be speaking with someone else who has been in the spotlight over the last 8 years, but will be bowing out, but maybe not for long. We're going to be talking with First Lady Dawn Amano Ige, get her thoughts of what life has been like for her in Washington Place, as well as working alongside her husband, Governor Ige, and her future plans down the line. There has been rumblings that she could be someone that seeks political office herself. She's an educator as her background, and so we want to get her thoughts about her future and just her last 8 years serving alongside her husband in this role of First Lady. We look forward to that conversation. We hope you'll join us here on Wednesday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.